for that.
There it is.
Oh, the broadcast is live.
Perfect. Excellent. So to get us started off, Guildify would like to acknowledge that some of our Canadian panelists are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. One of our panelists, L.S. Daly, a member of the Kittican Zibi Anishinabeg, he is studying sociology at Bishop's University while he is working on publishing his first book of fiction and will use his experience to encourage other students in self-improvement of their skills. I would now love to introduce you to our panel. We have L.S. Daly, Ryan De Bruin, Tao Wong, and Steve Campbell. I would like you all to take the floor and introduce yourselves. We'll start with L.S. Daly.
I did receive that very nice introduction. I'm very thankful for that. As the page said, I am a sociology student with minors in criminology and Indigenous studies. I am currently looking at where to go for my master's degree. I found that my writing skills were not where I would like them to be. And I decided to start writing to be able to improve that. Now I'm looking at my first publication as a real-life author.
Excellent. Ryan?
Good luck with that, by the way. It's exciting.
Thank
That's we were all there at one point. Cal a little longer than the rest of us because he's just so worldly at this point. He's such a good author. My name is Ryan De Bruin, and I've now written, I think, 8 books coming out on Sunday. That is System Misinterpret, Ether Collapse, and Ether Flows. My narrator's in here with me as well, and hopefully he doesn't bring out the Canadian. That being said, it's really exciting, and I can't wait to share, some of our Canadian stuff with you.
Amazing. Tao?
Hi, my name's Tao Wong. I have something like 30 plus books at the moment. I'm sorry, that seems to have just changed over with regard to the light coming down. And I have been self-publishing since about 2017. You probably know me best because of the System Apocalypse, but I also have a whole bunch of novellas, short stories, and actual novels, including a vampire-lit RPG called Eternal Night and a urban fantasy-lit RPG called Hidden Wishes.
And Thousand Lee.
Oh yeah, and 1,000 Lee. But this is a lit RPG panel, so we'll talk about that on Wednesday.
That's fair, yeah.
You're welcome.
And Steve.
How's it going, eh? I'm Steve Campbell, and I'd like to talk to you about the books that I do, eh? So I work with this, there he is, this hoser right here. I've worked with him before, eh? And I've also worked with this hoser right here as well, eh? On a short story that he did. And it's been great to do that, okay? So we're going to get the back bacon going and then talk more about books, okay, eh? Have a great day.
Letterkenny just became real.
Oh, God. Yes.
So I really
listen here, hosers. We're supposed to be keeping this professionally.
Who said professional? When was that? I never agreed to that. Who told us that? That is not that. No, I did not agree to that.
I feel horrible that my accent is just not. I can't do accents.
So if you'd like to ask the panel any particular questions on being Canadian or why it is a better place than other places, feel free to ask in the comments. I'm Irish, we're neutral. So that was why I was asked to this panel. So yeah, just throw in any questions because I don't care. Have fun.
Is this the first time that an Irishman has said that? Because I feel like you guys have an opinion about just about everything.
Yeah, but we finish it with we're neutral. So it's fine. It's just an opinion.
You're neutral about everything except the British. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Not just that, because I've been watching the that Wrexham series with Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Ryan being a Canadian, so this is very appropriate. And them purchasing a Welsh football team. and all the stuff that's been going on there. And so it's been really interesting to see what happens in those kind of things. And then, of course, obviously, because it's over in the UK, they deal with some of the things that have happened in Ireland and your guys's football teams. And you get pretty emotional and passionate about certain things. So you're not always neutral. Don't say that.
Well, I think that this is a panel all about you lot. So I'm just going to not talk. And someday I might want Steve to narrate one of my books. Well, not anymore. It's going to be Gary Furlong. So, brilliant
That
question.
Canadian bastard? I don't think so.
He's a dub.
Well,
So-
in Canada, we have 6 months of winter. Our winter starts next week-ish.
It's already 6 inches of snow outside my house. I don't know what you're talking about.
I live in South Canada, so I'm planning snow next week. And snow is deadlier than heat, in my opinion.
Okay. So what about you, Ryan? Can you explain why Australia is so much more deadly compared to Canada?
So it's got to obviously be the opposite. Clearly, I was on that panel with them. They're not scared of their, spiders and scorpions and alligators and kangaroos that will strangle you in the water. Those things don't matter. But here in Canada, I don't know if you know this, but we have something called the Canada goose, or, geese, whatever you want to call it. We actually, because when they're low leveled and they only have one head, we send them south to the beginner zone, which is the States. So they go down there, they level up, and they come back here once they have multiple heads. So if they have 2 or more, and I've seen like a 7-headed one, they're terrifying. That's why we're more deadly than Australia. Really, it's the Canada goose with 7 heads.
Yeah.
Cow.
I personally am more afraid of the moose. Have you seen those buggers? They are huge. We literally used to have stories of people hitting moose with their trucks at 90 to 110 kilometers per hour, and then the moose getting up and walking away while you're sitting there with your wrecked, $60,000 piece of machinery, kind of crying your eyes out, wondering, who's going to pay for it, because God knows the government isn't.
Steve?
I have had my fair share of run-ins with our deadly Canadian geese and also the moose that we have here in Canada, and a lot of bison, which I know is not unique to Canada, but oh my word, those suckers are friggin' huge. And you encounter those in the wild and it's crazy. I actually, on this note, I grew up in a town called Dawson Creek, BC. It's way up in northern Canada, and just found out this week that there was a black bear that attacked a couple of people that were out on a hike in Bear Mountain. And the bear came along, and normally black bears are not like this, but apparently in Canada, they're pissed off during hibernation, getting ready season. And so they attacked these 4 people. 2 of them managed to, one of them tried to punch it in the head, got swatted away. They took off and found a hunting cabin where they hid and called 911. It took an hour for the RCMP to get there. When the RCMP arrived, they were looking for these people. They had their flashlights out because it had become dark, and they finally came upon this. They were walking quietly, and someone heard a help very quietly, and they found that 2 women were on the ground and the bear was sitting on them and toying with them. Now it seems really funny, but it actually got quite serious because it was gnawing on their arms, and their head had actually eaten a whole buttocks cheek off of one of the women and was just messing with them. And they tried to, the police tried to get the bear off, tried to, shoo them and scare them away. The bear was not having it because they were like, I'm enjoying my time. So they ended up having to try and shoot the bear to take it down so that they could get these poor women into the hospital. They had to airlift one of them to Vancouver, another one they airlifted to Edmonton, I believe. And they survived, thankfully, but they were definitely in life-threatening critical condition, and they were concerned that they might have to actually amputate one of their arms because of how severely the bear had gnawed their arm off. So yeah, Canadian wildlife is no freaking joke. It's
I
for
honestly
reals.
thought you were joking for half of that.
No,
and then I
no.
realized that you're
No.
serious. Holy
No,
crap.
it's a very
Well,
serious
and
it
the
is-
grizzly
it's
bear,
crazy.
I guess, and the
It
grizzly
seems
bear is like
crazy.
a bigger black bear, and then it has mated with the polar bear, which is like I guess the biggest bear on Earth. So I guess we technically have some dangerous wildlife.
Well, bears
The
actively
only
eat
creature.
things. Sorry, I was gonna say, bears eat their prey alive. If they're eating you,
Mhm.
they don't kill you. They don't see a point, so they will eat you alive. That's kind
You'll
of
die at some
frightening
point.
and horrible. You know,
I regret this panel so much. So I'm sorry. I was laughing when Steve was like, "Oh, the police tried to get the bear off," and I just like I just started laughing, and then I was like, "Oh no, this is really serious." Stop it.
Yeah.
No, we
I was like,
won't.
oh,
The only animals on Earth that have built things large enough to be seen from space are humans and beavers. Beavers in Canada.
interesting. Yeah, our national animal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just forget
Why-
that. They really are our national animal.
Yeah, they are. I don't know who decided that beavers would be a good representative of Canada, but yeah.
Hey, we have more bald eagles in Canada than the US does, and the bald eagles is the American thing. So, I have no idea why.
Speaking of which, how many of you have actually heard a bald eagle call out or screech or whatever? Have you ever heard it? I have. We have a number of them here. It does not sound the way the Americans represent bald eagles in their little promotional things. They have to use a falcon because the bald eagle sounds horrible and high-pitched squeaky, like "Rah, rah," and you're like, what is going on? What is this? That is not what a bald eagle is supposed to sound like. So yeah, leave it to the Americans to try and make the bird seem more majestic than it actually is.
Do you want to try to do the majestic caw for us all, or is that just...
Oh.
There's actually a zoologist in the chat who has yet to figure out StreamYard, so we can't learn anything from them. So that they're trying their best. They've done fixed no zoologist is in the house, but still Facebook user. So hopefully we'll be able to get an insight into all of this soon from the comments.
That would be amazing. I mean, until they actually show their real name, I don't think we can consider them a proper authority. I'm questioning their legitimacy because we can't just go, oh, Facebook user, yes, we're going to take you as a zoology authority. That's not going to work.
Their name won't tell us anything either, but it'll at least make us feel better and be like,
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
I
you
think
could
they know
look
what
them
they're talking
up.
about.
You go on their Facebook thing and you go about, and if it doesn't say zoologist on there, then you're like, yeah, you're lying. You're totally making stuff up.
Let's see.
It's-
Sorry. I think we all saw that at the same time.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So please someone else start talking for a moment because I just need to
Like yourself.
All right.
So,
How about this? I myself decided to add in a lot of Canadian into my book, going, my character is trying to get into my university and becomes a necromancer. And Canadian history kind of happens. I have read or listened to Ryan's stories, so I know how he interprets Canada in his book and how he killed me off. But what kind of Canadian things would you guys want to see in someone else's book?
That's a good question. So one of the things, like, for just when you think about it, that we, a lot of people have done is they'll ignore it, right? So like when I'm reading a lot of the lit RPG stuff, it will stay completely south of the border for the most part. There's very little consideration. It's just a Great White North. So it was really fun when I discovered Tao's book to start in Whitehorse and have him move down and go. I think I can't remember John Lee's thing exactly, but then go down south into like Kamloops and Vancouver and stuff like that, right? And so it was really neat to see some Canadian representation. So I would just love to see kind of even just a glossary sometimes of like the whole idea of like, they meet the Canadians later on. They might be in the States, but in a system apocalypse or any of these things, if Canada's being represented, like if the world is being represented in the book and you're in the States, eventually that the American hat has to come down and just say, hey, we're still alive up here, eh? Playing hockey or something, So I just would love to see it represented that way.
It always amuses me with all of those really not even just our lit RPG, but in general apocalyptic work. Canada just kind of is like a footnote in it, and it's like, hey, we're right up here. You do realize in a lot of climate change or other apocalyptic scenarios, heading north up to us is actually a really good idea because that all of those climate change stuff is actually making a lot of lands that weren't marginal a lot easier to grow things with.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I'd love to see something about the PEI, the Maritimes. I've not seen anything from anyone about that. I need to go travel there and see it too.
Now that you say that, you're right. 100%.
I ain't the boy who sails the boat. I ain't the boy who fishes the boat, but I see a boat every day.
I's the boys, huh?
It's funny. I actually I have on occasion thrown in a little bit of Canadian here and there. I've talked about it before, where you're coming up with a bunch of different characters and you have to come up with all these different voices for different people. And if it's in a fantasy world where it doesn't matter, like people go, well, that's not a Scottish accent. Well, that's because it's not Scottish. It's blah, blah, blah. So like, they're making up worlds, so I can make up accents. And so it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. And I had it one time where a character had EH at the end of their sentence. And oftentimes we use that as our A. And for Americans, it can be like, So I read that and I was like, well, this guy has to be Canadian. I mean, come on. So I try and throw in Canadian where I can, whenever I can. So I had a SpongeBob Canadian guard that died almost immediately. But it's a lot of fun when you can throw that kind of Canadian stuff in there. I'm still hoping, and maybe some author that I work with will have it be a situation where they meet some Canadians that start singing. I would really love that. I think that would be fantastic. And actually, speaking about you, Tao, when you're talking about, zombies or post-apocalyptic and going up north and how it would work out really well, Max Brooks in his World War Z actually talked about that and how a lot of families migrated up north because they figured the colder weather would help, if not stop the zombies, slow them down at least. The irony is that they would go to Canada with sleeping bags that were rated for basement sleepovers and not actual 40-degree weather. So a lot of them died
and froze, and didn't bring enough food because they don't realize exactly.
Brought their entire DVD collection, but not actually some sustainable sustenance. So I found that book fascinating and really interesting in how he analyzed a lot of the practicalities of what would happen in a zombie apocalypse. But yeah, coming up north and then having them freeze, and then while they're frozen, going and putting an ice pick in their head. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that would work out really well. And I mean, they're already talking about wanting to come here because of Trump. So I mean, it makes sense that like zombies would push them up even more.
So I have two questions. Well, two statements really. One is a question from Justin John Ackerman, which is, what is Steve Campbell's narrating schedule looking like? And the other thing is that Facebook user is still failing. It's now does it work from Facebook user? No.
So wait, you went to school to become a zoologist, but you can't figure out how to...
I don't know. I'm questioning these credentials here, like seriously.
I've had to do all my classes online. I'm not questioning that.
Yeah.
So sorry, Steve, back to you on that.
Well, in I feel like I should sound like you a little bit, Brian, when I'm saying this. My narrating schedule is fucking ridiculous, is what it is, really. It's kind of a little bit crazy, to be honest. I'm loving the books that I'm getting to do. I'm really honored to get to work in what I'm working on. But I have a motherload of books coming up that I'm really excited about. I have a number of books a number of authors actually that I'm really, really wanting to work with a bit more. So I need them to hit me up so we can work together, because I know that they're out there and you know who you are. But Yeah, I think it's been a lot of chaos trying to manage a schedule, and then especially today manage a schedule and still try and hit all these panels. I've been freaking screwed. So Ryan thankfully is in this panel with me because I'm working on his book right now,
I'll
and so he
forgive
can't yell at
you
me
for
too much.
now.
For now.
Let's flip the last question then, actually, just to go out of curiosity, because what have we tried to, what did we want to see that's Canadian in books, but like what have we done as authors to maybe make our books more accessible or more understood by Americans is one that I think we could ask. And why don't we start with LS Daly, because he started the last question. Yeah, sorry.
So how are we making our books more accessible for Americans? For my own story, I have only put in a few A's into my novel, which, very Canadian. I've only made them apologize a few times for, silly things. And I haven't given them very strange names like Ottawa or Northwest Territories, strange names like that. I don't want to have them look up pronunciation guides like I have some other people.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll just skip and go to Tao.
You're muted, Tao.
You might be muted, Tao. Sorry, buddy.
I forgot. Sorry, I was playing around with my.
It's okay. You don't have to tell us.
Well, I
don't talk about what you're playing around with.
Useful thing that I was. Oh yes. Well, we don't talk about that one, and we definitely don't show it.
I'm hoping.
No, I just, I was very clear about all the different directions and how we give it. You hit, 2 hours north, and then turn off on the third mile, and you've got to be careful if it gets below 40 degrees, because that's when the ice gets when the roads gets icy. It's
so treat it like a fantasy world, basically.
Exactly, you just mess everything.
Canada is.
Yeah, don't make any sense in terms of measurements at all, because
did you go to freedom units, Tao? Like, have you made
I switch between the two, right? Because you got to be
as Canadians, we do it all the time. To be honest, like
exactly.
Really do.
I had my editor was like, you literally have kilometers here and that miles there, but that's you head 20 kilometers down the road and you turn right on the third mile. It literally says third mile there. So everyone uses it, And
I mean, I was laughing because you had said you had 2 hours down the road, and that's the way everything is in Canada. You don't say you had 30 kilometers here or 200 kilometers there. You say it was about 10 minutes. It was about 20 minutes. It was about 3 hours. Yeah, this was a 4-hour drive. That's how you measure distance in Canada.
I would normally use that, but roads were kind of screwed up, so they were actually using actual distances in that sense.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit harder when your method of travel changes quite a bit.
Exactly. But yeah, no, for sure, definitely. Most people talk about hours in here when they're talking about travel. Oh, it's a short drive, and that's the thing that gets me about Canadians coming from another country. Oh, it's a short drive. Really? Yeah, it's only 3 hours.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I'm one of those. I'm going to visit town next weekend, and I'm like, oh, it's a short drive. It's 4 hours away.
Sorry, can I just say that when I was in Toronto, we were going up to Northern Ontario, and I was like, oh, like, we're Toronto, Northern Ontario. And we drove straight for longer than the entire length of Ireland. We went straight to a place called Lake Magnetawan, and I was like, there were no turns. What happens if you broke down? And they're like, don't break down. I was like, terrifying. Sorry.
If you get very far north, you'll start seeing mile markers to the next gas station. 74 kilometers to the next gas station. The next one, 147. So you know where you need to get gas. You know how to get gas.
You have to, and you just fill up. You don't try to play around with it. I drove from Vancouver all the way to Yukon once, and I remember hitting a place where it was like 157 kilometers until the next gas station. fill the hell up. you know.
Yeah.
I was heading up north camping, and it was one was 87, the next was 147.
Oh,
You don't
And that's
take
it, right? And
Yeah.
like the other side to that is, and that's somebody's kind of said it in the thing, is like you got to like if you're living north or somewhere a little inaccessible like that, you can't really have an old beater car as easily because like you can't have something that can break down because it absolutely is terrifying. So like I've had it where people will buy new cars more or less every 2 years, every year, just because they like to go up north or go farther away from our few cities that we have up here, go away from the southern border, so to speak. So yeah, that's the other side of that.
We do call them mile markers, at
Yep.
least where I am.
Did I say
Yeah.
that? Oh, or did somebody
No,
say
it was the question that
No,
popped
someone
up in the
else.
thing
Oh,
that
yeah,
you're
yeah.
answering.
Yeah, mile markers. We literally have mile markers at some points, especially in the Yukon, because the U.S. Army actually built our main highway for us, which was very nice of you guys. You did that in World War II, and so that you marked it all for us in miles, and so that's why a lot of turnoffs are still in mile markers, because why the hell not? But when we used to live in the Yukon, we'd have a bag at the back of the car in the trunk for potential breakdowns, and you'd have everything you need to go and survive a night out because you don't know if you're going to break down and you might be stuck. And when temperatures drop below -40, you want the emergency, you want the extra blanket, and you want the emergency the foil blanket on top, and markers and everything in there. Food, water. The water was always an interesting one to have in there, because you'd put water bottles in, and then you look at them when you take them out, and they're just frozen blocks of ice, and you're like, how am I supposed to actually use this?
Gotta heat them up.
Yeah, you kind of have to put them in between your legs and heat them up slow.
Where's Elliot? Did
Uh,
Elliot leave?
that sounds way too American to me to call them freedom markers. It's sort of like when you guys wanted to say freedom fries, and us in Canada went, "Are you serious? Don't be ridiculous."
We were laughing.
Yeah, pretty hard. So yeah, we would never, if we were going to change them at all, we would never change them to freedom markers. At least, in my opinion.
Yep, definitely a spare tire for sure. No tents. You didn't really need a tent because you just sleep in your car. You do not want to be camping out away from your car, because especially during winter, if it's snowing, you could get buried.
Why isn't Jacob Tanner on this?
Yeah, I was
panel,
gonna say,
by the way?
but he lives in the EU. But
Yeah.
Jacob Tanner just
I
repping
actually-
himself. Canadians are the best.
In the back of my car, I have a tent, a sleeping bag, a cot, and 2 different types of civilian MREs.
Yep.
I drive home for the holidays, and I know that drive always, if something happens,
What's an MRE? Sorry.
meals ready to eat. Canadian version is individual meal pack.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It
Well, you
all
know.
still tastes horrible from what I understand. Not that I've tried the Canadian version.
We actually have a poutine version of our military rations, and it's not bad. It got the gravy pretty good.
Okay. Oh, that's a question for us. Best poutine, where would you get it?
Oh,
Montreal.
Montreal's
Montreal.
great, but Montreal is like donair too is really good. Like shawarma is another thing that's here,
Oh.
at least in this area. But I think for poutine, to answer that question, I've had the best poutine on the East Coast in Halifax. Actually, I don't know why it was, but it was handed down the best poutine I ever had in Canada. It was so good.
So Ryan, you obviously say poutine. I grew up saying poutine, but who says poutine? Because there's a lot of Canadians that I hear and they'll go poutine, and I'm like, why are you saying it like that? Why?
Sorry,
Why?
I thought you were saying that Ryan said it differently to you, and you said
Yeah.
the same word, and I was like, "Oh my god, is this an accent thing?" Because that's the same fucking word. Sorry. So yes,
I said
who
poutine.
says
You
Vladimir?
said poutine, and I said poutine. So I mean, it's vastly different.
Yeah.
There's only 7 different ways to say poutine in the correct accent,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very tonal language. Canada is a very tonal language, much similar to Mandarin. So yeah, in how you round out those vowels, it very much just changes the meaning of the word to a great degree.
When you say things in your accent, Steve, people will see it as fact.
On my Instagram.
Okay? So you can say any bullshit as though like, yes, and just like the Mongolian, No, it's very similar. And people are like, I learned something today.
I like this. Isn't poutine Russian? Or Putin, obviously, in this case.
Isn't Putin Russian? What the hell is going
I'd,
on?
All right,
I'd be willing
all right.
to do cannibalism for that one.
Here's the question: chicken gravy or beef gravy?
Ooh.
See, my wife would go chicken gravy, 100%. She loves the gravy from A&W, and she was like, when she was pregnant with our firstborn, she would get a large gravy and a small fry, and she was only getting the fry for posterity because really the truth is she was ready to drink that gravy, and I was just like, don't do that in front of me. That's would be my only request. For myself, I'm a beef gravy kind of guy when it comes to poutine or poutine, however you would like to say it.
Gravy for the soporific effect. And to just avoid the question.
I think chicken for me.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do really like the A&W poutine for some reason.
It's yummy.
It's not bad, really. I mean, I've had better at other places, but for consistently across the country, it's easy to get to.
Yeah.
Oh, and for the
From what?
Americans, our A&W is very different from your A&W. They're two entirely different companies. So if you come up
Like
here,
mine specifically, or
no,
I guess another question would be: do we have to explain what poutine is to our audiences?
No. No, you
I don't think so. I think
No.
that poutine is
Multicultural.
widely known enough.
Yeah,
We
maple
talk about it
syrup
so
and
much.
poutine are the only things that people know.
Just not
Canadians,
together.
maybe.
Just
Not
not
together.
together.
No.
oh
There
god,
are dessert poutines though with maple syrup. I'm not making that up. That does exist. It's got like marshmallows and stuff in there. I'm not like.
I had off of a food truck, we had a Thanksgiving dinner poutine, and it had the gravy, the turkey, the fries, and the cranberry sauce all in there. Gotta say, I'm a fan. It was good. It was a nice poutine.
Yeah, holiday
Sorry,
For
we have a
me-
question. Sorry, I'm so sorry. We have a question that isn't poutine related.
What?
Sorry, and it's actually this is great. Sorry. So if I was thinking from Justin John Ackerman, if I was thinking about taking my family to Canada for a vacation, where should I go and how would I meet up with all of you? Lol.
Whoa.
Good question.
So should we not take this question seriously because you put lol at the end, or
I read
Well-
what I see.
Uh,
I could be
J'ai
a
Habat-
narrator, eh?
J'ai habité Quebec. I would. So since I live in Quebec, I would actually really suggest what you'd want to do. You
That's
want
the
to see the
flyover
woods.
state. No, I'm just joking.
Like, do you want to eat poutine or do you want to see the water? I mean, we got a lot of both.
yeah,
speak
or the
French?
mountains, or if you want to go to Saskatchewan and watch your dog run away for 3 days, you could do that as well. I mean, there's all kinds of
Yeah.
things you can do in Canada.
Yeah.
It very much depends on what kind of holiday you want to have, because Canada is freaking huge, and there is a lot of diversity here.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something that I would love to disabuse a lot of people of, is that it's like Canadians are just Canadians and that's it. And it's not that way at all, because somebody from BC is very, very different than somebody you'd meet from New Brunswick or from Montreal or from the Maritimes. Newfoundland is its own thing altogether. They decided, just for the hell of it, they were going to have their time zone be half an hour different than everyone else, just because they could. So, like, I mean, there's a lot of diversity, and depending on what you want to see, really depends on what you're going to experience or where you're going to go in Canada.
the Japanese really like
What kind of countryside?
PAI, wasn't it?
The warmer weather, he
where
said. Yeah.
Anna Green Gables comes from. They
Mhm.
they really go there. The Germans are a very common visitor to the Yukon, as well as the Japanese. The Japanese do it so that they can have babies, and I mentioned it inside the Season Apocalypse, but they believe that it's good luck to conjugate underneath the.
Oh, that's right, Makoto.
Yeah. So that's why Makoto is that it's considered good luck. So we get a huge number of them coming in, and then the Germans actually have a direct flight from Munich to the Yukon every summer. So they fly there. And then you've got the Rockies in there, which is a beautiful, beautiful region to see. And some of the best hiking and stuff like that. So that's a lot.
I live
Oh,
30 minutes from the Rockies. So I can speak to the fact that, well, I shouldn't say, 30 minutes from the Rockies. I'm about an hour and 20 minutes from Banff itself. And some of the most spectacular scenery and locales you'll ever see in the world. If you do decide to come here, I highly recommend checking out the grassy lakes, or what's called the Emerald Lakes, where the water literally looks like you're looking at a jewel. It's a bit of a hike to get there. It's not impossible by any stretch, but yeah, there is some unbelievable stuff. And then
that's the glacier runoff ones, right? That's
yeah. And then there's just off of that, if you were to head a little bit south of Calgary, southwest of Calgary, you would hit like Drumheller area, where we have hoodoos. If you've never seen hoodoos, they're phenomenal and really a spectacle of nature that is really amazing. So yeah,
lots of dinosaur fossils there too. One base. And then Vulcan, Canada, for the Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
Have you been to Vulcan, Steve?
Yes, I've been to Vulcan a few times. Yeah. It's a small town, but they lean into that Vulcan hardcore. So they have a number of museums. There's a full, like a really, I mean, not full size, obviously, but like a quite large Enterprise statue right towards the center of town. They got all kinds of stuff going on there. So
I'm going to answer that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, were they named after Vulcans from Star Trek or the god of metalworking?
I don't know, actually. It's a good question.
They weren't named. Their name they had before the Enterprise happened, but when that started going on, they leaned into that pretty hardcore, because they're a tiny dinky little town, and they're like, we need people to get in here, so let's add some tourism to this. So they leaned into that a number of years ago pretty hard.
Well, I would have answered Ottawa, just because it's the capital city, and if you wanted to kind of be central, Ontario is probably where almost everybody on the panel can at least get to, because Quebec's right beside us. Tao and I both live in Ontario, but Niagara Falls is actually a pretty fun place to visit. It's very touristy, but yeah, everything else that they've mentioned is also super worth seeing. Like, you can go to Vancouver side of things, or you can go to the maritime Halifax side of things and see two completely different lifestyles and like the ocean views. One's very California-esque and one's very, strap your boots, blue collar. So like it's very, very different.
Apparently we have a heavy metal band starting here soon.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. They're rolling a large drum to the art lab for some reason. I'm not asking questions.
Oh, that's what that was. Okay.
In the interest of efficiency, I think that we can combine two questions here. So the follow-up from Justin John Ackerman was like the second part of the question of how do I meet up with you, with another question of how do you all feel about people trying to live in the forests thanks to TV shows. So would you be up for meeting Justin John Ackerman in the forests? And maybe inspired by a TV show, Star Trek, maybe Vulcan? Like, I don't know. Let's think outside the box here.
Can we bring our own serial killer in Jacob Tanner? I think that's what people were saying, right? Like, can we bring...
Yes.
I think if you can survive in the forest, the Canadian forest during the winter, you deserve to be there. So yeah, if you can handle a Canadian forest life, more power to you, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
As far as meeting up with us, I think if you drag back bacon and beer along the back of your trailer through the streets, you will get any number of Canadians you want.
And a toboggan. Make sure there's a toboggan.
Right.
If anybody knows what that is.
and toques. We need toques, because it's going to be cold. We need toques.
Yeah.
All you do is you get a skidoo, then you tie the toboggan to the back of the skidoo, then to the back of the skidoo is the maple syrup and the bacon.
Yeah, you kind of have to bring both of those for me.
Can you imagine that 40 minutes ago I was worried about my first time moderating? And this is what I have to deal with. Thank you for making this such a ride. So we have another question here from Kelly Russell. Is there a convention everyone frequents every year? I know a few USA authors go to Dragon Con.
I go to Dragon Con most years too, and I think Ryan does as well.
And Steve was there this year as well. Maybe we'll convince him to keep coming too.
Like I said in my last panel, I just need some people that I haven't worked with yet that were at the con to send me a big offer for a project that we can do in another year, 2 years, whatever. And then I have a reason to be like, listen, this is a business expense. And my wife is like, see, I get lots of work from this kind of stuff. So I need to be going to these conventions, babe. I'm sorry. Or I'm sorry. I
agree with this.
I got to go away. So
as a first-time writer, this is the second writing convention I have been to. The first time I've been on a panel. The first convention was actually last weekend in Ottawa for CanCon, a speculative writing convention where I got to meet Ed Greenwood and a few other very known fantasy authors. I would love to go to Dragon Con as an author, as a guest, as a person with my thumb out on the side of the road.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So
DC's really
there's
good.
time. There's like
I've
10
heard good
months.
things about CanCon too.
yeah. I've gone a number of years to Calgary. We have a con here called the Calgary Comic Expo. And so I've been to that a number of times. We've had some great panelists. The first year I went, I got Stanley to sign something for me because, I mean, I love that guy. And then it was the first time that the entire cast from Star Trek Next Generation had been able to get together since the filming of the show. And that happened here in Calgary. So we get some decent representation out. And I met an author that we actually worked together later on and won an award for her project that I did with her. And she was an independent author that I met at the Calgary Comic Expo. So yeah, I do that one as well. Love it.
Excellent. I'm just thinking, is there any other questions there? Nope, you can go back to talking shite.
Okay, so something I want to bring up since we're talking shite, and I wanted to know what you guys think, because I know that for yourselves, there's a lot of words that we spell differently in Canadian than they do in the US. Do you consider that, or do you address that in your books? Even if you're if you're writing for an American audience or in an American setting, or do you change it when you're writing in a book with a book that is actually set in Canada, like I know some of you do? Do you still change the spelling to appeal to a more American audience?
Yeah.
Those
1 stars that come in and that complain about, your spelling, it's not worth it, really, to get those 1 stars and not do a minor thing like change the spelling, unfortunately.
Well, here's the thing, right? That's for Canadians are forgiving. Like if you spell color without the U, Canadians won't even see it most of the time. And if they do see it, they'll just yeah, that's fine. But I find, and this is a very small minority, I'm sure, but there are people that do get upset or triggered by the wrong spelling or the Canadian / the rest of the world spelling of the word. So yeah, I do.
My first editor was very offended when I took 1 letter out of color. Now that I have an American editor, I get a lot of notes of, why do you keep adding U's to words? And I also pronounce it dagger.
Yeah, Steve got in trouble for that one, actually.
Dagger.
Didn't get in trouble, got a bad review, exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's kind of, that's a big one for sure. And I think that's one of the things like that, I've definitely had Tao's advice actually on that before. I think, when I was publishing my own book, I think we've chatted when we meet, and it's like, why wouldn't you do it? And exactly what he just said, right? So it's worth it. And honestly, you put up a style sheet and it's like everything should be spelled in American, if you
Move
will.
on with your life. Yeah.
Exactly.
It was actually on one of your books, Ryan, that this kind of came up for me personally because, yeah, like you say, you're writing a large portion of the market in Amazon or whatever is an American audience, and they're going to be the ones that are going to make a bigger stink if you're not using their spelling, but also when it comes to their pronunciation, right? So that's something that I specifically need to concern myself with, is pronouncing things in an American accent, and even to the point where if it's not super specified, you knowing whether I should be doing an American or a Canadian accent. And a prime example of that was with Ryan when we were doing a book where he talks about all of the veins and arteries, and as Canadians would say it, and even you, Brian, from the UK would say capillaries. And so in the US, they say capillaries. And so I had to be like, what do I do with this? Because technically the book is set in Canada. And even when we're like, okay, but how would he know this word? And he would have learned the word from the AI who was British, and the British say capillaries as well. But I'm like, do I say capillaries or do I say capillaries? Which one is going to give me the most flack, or which one's going to have a problem? And I did, in fact, in one other book, no, it was that same book that I had someone who is Irish say capillaries and someone who was American in the book say capillaries. And the proofer came back to me and said, you can't say, you said this wrong. It has to be capillaries. It's not capillaries. And so, yeah, it's a distinctive thing that you have to really be concerned about, because Americans can get really finicky about how you pronounce things. And they'll be like, oh, that's it. I can't anymore with this book. It's wrong. It's wrong. I'm done. I can't stand the way you said daggers. I can't say the way daggers. I can't stand the way, decals, decals, all that kind of fun stuff.
So we've another couple of questions that came in. So one of them, quick one, is for Tao. Why are the MCs for System Apocalypses loners?
If you mean my series, John's an asshole, and that's written. If you finish the series, you can see why he has to be an asshole for the way that the series is written. Katie's character is not a loner. Actually, she's got her kids, and Craig's one, which is System Apocalypse Relentless, he actually gets a companion in the second book, which he sticks around with. I think Craig had a very specific progression for his story and where he's going with it, which I know about. So there is a reason for part of it, the way that he's doing it. If you mean apocalyptic lit RPGs in general, I think there's a significant portion of people who just want to see characters be great. And it's easier to do it when they are loners, especially in the beginning. And then you can focus on the systems and the apocalypse as it happens, rather than having to juggle multiple emotions and people. And when you're running around trying to keep people safe, it's very different mindset than trying to go, hey, I'm going to be the most badass person around. So, that's why I think you see a lot more loners in the beginning, because it's easier to write badass loners than it is to write people who have to spend time doing stuff like that.
And I mean, let's be fair. People in a post-apocalyptic world, the ones who are likely to survive are the loners. Like, you look at a zombie apocalypse, it's going to be the people who die first. They're going to be the ones that they have kids, they have grandparents, they have all of these people around them that end up getting sick, and they're like, oh no, are you okay? Oh, I'm dead. And then you have the other ones who are concerned about all their friends and family. They're going to spend more time trying to find their friends and family and maybe do dumb stuff to save their family than to just be on their own and make sure that their own survival is what's going to keep them alive. So I find
think
that
it depends. I think my argument would be it depends on the community that you're in, right?
And the apocalypse that happens. I suppose.
Yeah, and the apocalypse and the setting of the apocalypse and whatnot. I know a lot of people who I would definitely want on my back if things went down.
I would say also in Canada, if you're in an isolated village, or a town, I've lived in a town that had a lower population than some buildings I've lived in. So at the end, if you're trying to get somewhere, you're probably going to be going alone. There's probably not many people around you. Think of all the late night travels, or thinking about all the late night travels I've done. 99% of those are alone.
Yeah.
And I mean, Tao, tell me this: of those people that you would want to have your back, are they children and elderly and people that most social people would want to hang around? Or are they a bit of a loner and powerful themselves and like to associate with certain people, but
I would say they're a little bit of both, right? I mean, some of them are on the older side of things, but a lot of them have skills. And admittedly, there are a lot of SCA, ex-SCA people, right? If you're talking about apocalypse, I'm not worried just about surviving tomorrow. I'm worried about surviving 6 months down the road. You know, people who know how to can, who know how to build things, who know how to fix things. You know, you need that. With a system apocalypse, you can kind of right around that, you know, give yourself magical systems. In a real world apocalypse, I want people who can show me how to, you know, filter out water so I don't die from shitting myself to death.
right, agreed. But that's something that you want from society, of people that you find later on after the apocalypse has already kind of started. The people that you start out with, they might generally be a bit more of a liability unless you're like a survivalist who only associates with other survivalists.
And
I don't know.
trust issues as well. Like, how are you going to trust another loner that's like, I always just keep this gun for safety? And you're like, stay the fuck away from me.
Do you want to see my basement? It's really secure. I got a lock on it. Come down, check it out. I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm okay. I'll stay up here.
The strangers are getting comfy. It's like, okay. Now, before we crack on, there is another, we're getting to a few minutes left, and I want to leave a bit of time for you to talk about your current works and things that are coming up. But we did get a question from Jeffrey Martell. When Andrea narrated Katie's books, Australian, one thing Andy had to overcome was the sentence structure differences. Do any of you find differences besides vocabulary and pronunciation when it comes to the Western audience? We'll start with LS Daly, if you want. You took a breath. I was like, he is prepping.
My first language was French for reasons of Canadian. I lost the French, but I still think a lot of words in French, and the French way of saying any sentence. Bonjour, comment ça va? Ça va bien? Êtes-vous? Ça va. So our structures tend to be a little bit longer, in my opinion, than American sentence structures. A lot more apostrophe, or a lot more commas. We also tend to move our nouns and verbs around more so than American writers, in my opinion, at the very least.
So it's just kind of funny because on the panel for young adults and kids, that was one of the things that they said to appeal to a younger audience, make your sentence structure more simple and easy. So I'm just kind of chuckling. But I honestly, I don't think so. I don't think there is much that is that much different, because I grew up, so influenced by Americans. And so everything I probably read was either American or J.K. Rowling was British, right, when she wrote, or was she living in the States by that point? I don't know the timeline for when she wrote Harry Potter, but most of everything that I read multiple times was American. So I think that's kind of what influenced me. And I don't know. Maybe Steve will completely say that my sentence structure is horrible. I don't know, but I don't think so.
Excellent. Tao?
I'm not the person to ask about sentence structures. I mean, I speak English as my main language, but I also get influenced by all my background languages that I know. So I just write and hope that it makes sense.
How many languages do you know?
I get by. I used to be relatively fluent in Malay, and I could converse in Cantonese, and I'm studying Mandarin again because I'm horrible with it. But my Cantonese and Mandarin, my Cantonese has dropped off hugely since I haven't used it really religiously in about 20 years. So, yeah. And I can curse. I used to be able to curse in like 10 different languages. Forgotten most of those curse words though, which is really
that's
sad.
a shame. That's a shame.
Steve, what about you?
As a Canadian, reading and narrating books that are written by Americans, by people in the UK, by Australians, New Zealanders, and Canadians, I can definitively say that yes, there is a difference in the style and way that they write, and it definitely is. There's a difference between the way a Canadian would write a book. Ryan, I'm sorry, bud. Sorry,
That's okay.
but you write differently than a lot of Americans do. And yeah, what Ellis was saying about the switching or the rotating of nouns and verbs in the sentence, not wrong, but different. And it can kind of trick you up a little bit if you get used to a particular style of writing, and then all of a sudden it changes to something else. Then you're like, oh, what? And not to say that that's exclusive to Canadians versus Americans, but yeah, all the way across the board, there is definitely a different melody and style to the way they write, the way they speak, and the way they structure their sentences. So yeah, it can be a little bit different as a narrator to experience all of those and try and code switch to remember which one I'm in, and then stay in that for a long enough time. Because especially when you're trying to read someone who is supposed to be American, but they're written by an Australian or they're written by a Canadian, or on the vice versa, where you have someone who's American that just says, he said in his Latin accent. And I'm like, but nothing he said sounded even remotely anything a Latin person would say. They sound like they're from Tennessee. So, it's not quite the same thing. And it's hard to try and transition that stuff out if their people are not cognizant, if authors are not cognizant of what their voices are actually doing. Would you guys possibly take Ted Cruz back?
So
asking for
we only have a couple of
once
minutes
bought,
left.
no returns.
Yeah.
No, he's yours forever.
You guys get
So,
Bieber too, I think.
We only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to.
Well,
do
they
this
wrecked
quickly.
Bieber, so they have to keep him.
Yeah.
So
He was
first
a
of all,
nice
I
kid with
just want to
feathery hair.
know: did the Facebook user figure it out SteamYard? Zoologist,
yeah.
can you reveal yourself in the final 2 minutes? Also, starting with LS, would you like to tell us a bit more about what you're currently working on, what you're hoping to, everything coming up?
Right now, I'm working on my first novel. It is called The Ethical Necromancer. I like playing with dichotomies of going good and bad, throw it into the same character. The reason why I started, I said, is to be able to better my own writing. At my university, we have a program to be able to take our talents, receive certain help to be able to become better at those talents, and spread those to our group. So I am co-lead of our English literature department, or English literature club. And I hope to have the novel done very soon. I just received the first feedback from my final editor, which is only very devastating.
Yeah.
Ryan?
The dagger, as we say. So the heart. So yeah, my name's Ryan DeBruin. So I right now I have my Starred Tower book up for 99 cents because on Sunday and Dark Inspire, which I also have here, is coming out. So that's the next releases for Ryan. I'm working on Ether Collapse 5 as well as Shooter with Xander Boyce, who is making fun of me in the comments. And I see you, Xander. I want my chapter by the end of tonight for Shooter. That's what I'm going to say. Laying the whip down.
Tao.
What am I? Oh, right. I'm writing. I have so many projects. I'm working on a novel for a prequel for 1,000 Lee right now that will be given out to people on a free basis. The patrons are getting it now, and then next year it'll be given out on a free basis via a newsletter swap thing called Epic Action Fantasy Club. So if you look that up, you sign it up, you'll get the book free. I am also working on a serial which is going to be released on my website for free as well. I'm doing a lot of bloody free things. I need to do something that actually pays me. And then I have a epic fantasy that I have been working on for 2 years that I really need to write because I have the cover and it's amazing. And then after that, I'll go back to ATL book 9. And then after that, I have a lit RPG that I really need to write. Lots of things to run.
Excellent. Steve?
Now I don't feel so bad about saying all the things that I have going on. Okay, so recently completed and soon to be out today, hopefully, and if not tomorrow, we're trying to get a hold of ACX to find out. Jacob Tanner's Second Chance Swordsman is coming, and I'm very excited for it because the ebook has done really well and the story is awesome. Also coming out very, very soon within the next week is the complete series of Bright Lord by Alex Knowles. Very, very, very good sci-fi lit RPG series that I really enjoyed. Have a lot. That was a love project for me for sure. Also, something I haven't mentioned because it's not lit RPG, but I am really excited about it, and I think you guys would really love it because the author contacted me wanting specifically a lit RPG author because of the style they wanted the narration to be in. Is this series called The Chaos Mages, and it's written by Max Steele and Stephanie Fox. I did it as a duet narration, which I'm really happy about. I love doing duet narrations with Diva Marie Gregory. And that one, book 1, should be coming out within the next 2 weeks. We have already recorded all 5 books of the series. So they're going to be rapid released as they're coming out very quickly in the next month. And then what I'm working on right now, as I've said before, is Ryan DeBruin's currently. I'm working on his System Misinterpret. Giant monster. Thank you very much for showing that. And that one's going to be out, released next month for sure. And then what I'm starting is a brand new project for Athon. For
is it
Alex.
Athon or Atheon?
Athon. Athon is how it's pronounced.
Thank you.
I didn't correct you earlier. I felt so bad.
Sorry.
So that is going to be a really beast of a series. I think the first 2 books are just about or over 20 hours each. I'm doing the 2 books back to back. It is a going back in time to reverse stuff. I seem to be doing a lot of those. I don't know why, but it works out great for me because they're a lot of fun. But that is actually written by Alex Kowalski, and I got to make sure that I get his name correct because I don't know it for sure. So yeah, that I'm really excited about as well. And so yeah, that's a shorter version of what's coming up. I have lots more, but I won't go into those because we would be here all night.
Geneva will kill us.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified. There we go. See, she knows. I'm like, no, it's serious. There's a knife in hand. I'm just scared. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Yeah. Takeover's coming up, and there'll be another panels later on in the evening. Sorry, the day. I'm in Ireland. It's late. Have a great evening, everyone.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Hey guys, take care.
Bonsoir.
Take off, eh?
Bye.
Yeah.